Hello, everyone, and welcome to the APT and Cybersecurity LinkedIn Live event. My name is Aaron Stillwell, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Mavro. Recent developments, including Anthropic's disclosure, have raised some serious questions about how close we are to autonomous cyber operations. To help unpack this, we are lucky to be joined by Dennis Underwood, CEO of Cyber Crucible. Dennis is a seasoned cybersecurity leader with extensive experience in cyber operations and automation. He advises organizations on how to defend effectively as attacks move to machine speed. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you as well, Alex.
Awesome. So the first question, Dennis, is can you kind of walk us through your professional background and what led you to founding Cyber Crucible, kind of especially given how rapidly automation and AI are reshaping cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always had this kind of bug in inside of me, to develop scaling solutions, highly scalable solutions. And actually, I got into this and got into that world. There was a peer-to-peer. Fortunately, everyone here is technical, right? So I can kind of just skip some of the descriptions, right? So there was like this peer-to-peer botnet that seemed to mutate and evolve faster than anyone could keep up with it. It was a game of whack-a-mole, and I had my second company doing services consulting, and I said, if I can crack some kind of automated way to get ahead of these malware developers, then at the time I had some contracts with some banking customers and stuff like that for services, and I said, that would be a sweet way to go back to them and say, hey, I developed this new automated capability. Let's add a zero onto the contract, right? Let's make it a little bit bigger of a contract. And so I developed this. Took about 6 months, quite honestly. It's unglamorous work, unlike what we see on TV, of course. And I came back with this takeover exploit where I could take over the whole botnet and kind of give it commands to do what I want to do, almost like what's that movie with the Somalian pirates? And the guy was like, "I'm the captain now." It was one
Oh,
of those
yeah,
moments,
Tom
right?
Hanks.
Yeah, so that
Great
kind of gave
movie.
me my first flavor. Honestly, it didn't go the way I thought it would. I thought that I was prepping to go try to get in front of like Bank of America or Vanguard or something like
Huh?
that in Charlotte, and instead these two government guys flew down and were like, "We want your code," and that went a different direction, right? So next thing I know, I'm getting a job offer from the folks over at like NSA and then which I can be more public about now, right? Because I'm no longer there, right?
Yeah, of course.
And but it kept doing automation things, and then eventually I said, I had Cyber Crucible on the side. It was kind of sitting there, not much revenue going through it, just for commercial engagements and experiments. And I said, the world's changing. I saw with ransomware that there was definitely a change afoot with AI. It was all driven by AI and automation, quite honestly. More automation than AI in the beginning. And I said, you know what? There's a commercial opportunity here, and I'm going to leave and chase it. And so that's honestly where Cyber Crucible came from. I saw a change in the market. I saw there could be a new way. There has to be a new way to approach the industry, and I said, let's go ahead and see if we can make something new that everyone else is zigging. Let's see if we have to zag now. If we can call something new to face this new threat, and that's where we are today, actually.
Awesome. So, Dennis, kind of the recent Anthropic disclosure describes an AI system being manipulated to conduct a largely automated cyber espionage campaign. What was kind of your reaction when you first reviewed the details?
When I first saw it, I was like, I said, first of all, I said, finally, there's some public evidence of what's really been going on behind the scenes. The only other kind of anecdotal evidence we really had in the marketplace, such as you could describe to your business leadership. Of course, we all talk about polymorphism, and we get all excited about all these new randomization hacks and everything, right? But to make it very easily, consumable by the business leadership, I always only had phishing websites to go look at, right? And there's been some studies, and the phishing websites, those infrastructures behind all those phishing sites, they normally only last 24 hours or less, which means that the hackers, the bad guys, the criminals, whatever, the bad girls, whatever, have the automation, the lift and shift automation in place to create an entire phishing backend and then tear it down and create a new one in under 24 hours, right?
Wow.
That's levels of automation that most companies just, we would dream of that, right? To
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that level of automation, right? But they're doing it, every day. I think the average site is around 2.5 days, that for like the old sites, right? And so that was the only kind of evidence I had to go off of to explain to people what I'm seeing and what we all know and is going on in the background. And the Anthropic was like, okay, my first reaction was finally third party evidence. It's not just me being like some kind of John the Baptist out there looking weird and smelling weird, eating locusts, talking about stuff. But now it's now I have third parties. But then my second thought was, you really don't need AI for all of this because they haven't had AI for a lot of this for a while. So this is
Yeah.
more of a new application of how AI can be used.
That's actually was on a question is what fundamentally separates this attack from the automated tools and scripts attackers have been used for many years?
Yeah, I mean, really, the use of LLMs for some of this more, we'll call it rudimentary automation, really is, I think that's what's new. That and using a public infrastructure and not, because a question nobody seems to be asking that I could find is, it's kind of like, well, Aaron, why didn't they use their own private LLMs, to do all
Oh,
of
yeah.
this then,
Yep.
Um, and I look at that like a lot of like the mutation stuff and the polymorphism and randomization doesn't really need AI. It really doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I was kind of like, well, okay, it must be because it's the sexy new thing, and they're seeing how good AI can be.
So one of the most concerning aspects was how the attackers bypassed AI guardrails. Are we now seeing kind of social engineering of AI systems become part of the modern attack chain?
That's a really good question. Whenever we saw what was being used in the attack, the tool chain life cycle, whatever you want to call it, where you could dust off any diagram you want. I'm trying not to name any of the known ones, that are really big out there that people use. But like, uh, what you find out is that AI isn't always that hot at coding or making your malware polymorphic or any of that stuff. AI is not really the good tool for that. 3 lines of Python are actually arguably better,
Yeah.
but it's really, really good at mimicking humans,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is the initial access broker. The getting in part is that's always a really big challenge, right?
I
And
can see that. The social engineering attacks,
yeah,
I could see where it excels.
I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know if you guys have had anyone on here who specializes in manipulating people, to get in, but it seems like AI really lets you get over language barriers and operate at scale in manipulation in a way that I don't think we've seen before.
So there's kind of been debate in the security community about whether this incident represents true autonomy or is it being kind of overstated. Where do you kind of land in that debate? And where does the distinction matter for defenders?
That's a really great question. I think I saw some of that argument, and it almost seemed like it was not important. Like it didn't matter,
Yeah.
like if some junior person can just like tweak this big infrastructure once in a while, that does all these really, really fancy things. I'm like, well, sure, but that, now that one person to tweak things once in a while, um, is able to operate like a team, like a big, experienced, very expensive, very secretive team, and they get to kind of abstract away all those resources, right? So I was almost like, when you see someone, I don't know, they're buying a car and they name all these really fantastic things, and someone's like, yeah, but they need the premium gasoline, and you're like, okay, like moving on, like
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to matter.
So what does this level of automation mean for organizations that don't really have large scale security teams or deep threat intelligence capabilities?
Yeah, it's I don't really see it as affecting what's already happening and what's
Yeah.
already been happening. when I moved from Maryland and focused on Cyber Crucible, it was because I saw in the quote unquote dark web, but I saw the sellers of data and the hackers complaining that they were bypassing defenses too easily, and that there was just too much stolen data out there, that the price of the data was going down, right? And they needed to get, I don't know what they spend their money on, but they weren't getting enough of it, whatever it was,
Yeah.
and they moved more and more towards automation and ransomware. So, I see this level of automation. I think it's good third-party analysis from a name that business leaders can recognize, and because they weren't in the security chain, they didn't have to worry about hiding any details that make their tool look bad. Like an EDR vendor wouldn't have put out something like that necessarily, right? Because they kind of egg on their face, right?
Yeah.
So it really is an emperor no clothes moment from a very reputable name in a different industry, which I find fascinating. That we're able to have this level of detail finally kind of coming out, and but it's not new. The AI part's new, sure, Anthropic's new, but not this infrastructure.
So now I guess I'm gonna hand it over to, I know Alex has a few questions on discuss the defense automation, the strategy.
Indeed. Before that, would you like to answer to some questions, or should we wait until the end, Dennis? As you
Whatever
prefer.
you want to do. Yeah, I mean, I'm. We can also talk about, I don't know. Like
We have some questions from the public. So
from the public. Oh boy. Well,
from the community. In
So
fact,
actually, Dennis, if you click on the, I don't even know what that button is, Alex. You could probably help him out. You can see the questions.
On the bottom.
yeah, on the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you hit the chat
I was
button.
answering questions and waiting for a gotcha. So.
Yeah, you can see the questions, and that's up to you, Dennis. We'll kind of leave it open. If you see questions you want to answer, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, sure. So I guess should I say who asked? I mean, does the audience see this too?
You can say only the first name, and that's all.
And I could post it up if you say it, I could post it up. So
okay. So I mean, Gene Bandy, actually no Gene, Aaron, he would be an awesome person to come on if you haven't yet. But yes, he's asking about creating guardrails. Not really a question, just a comment. So. Then Dr. Ahmed, provide an example to clarify attack automation and defense automation. I actually just did a little white paper. It's like musings from Dennis that might be good with a Chardonnay or something, and it's an example, to clarify attack automation. So there's different stages for attacker automation. That will relate in different ways to the defender. There's different stages. So first you have, for instance, getting in, so attack automation with LLMs. Yeah, I think, if you're going to use LLMs to generate, spear phishing emails and have sustained chats with like your quote unquote victims, you can call them sheep if you're really looking to get your lead speak on, but like, I think that's the biggest example of kind of how you can use attack automation to scale out, scale away the typos, make it regional, put on the persona of the victim that you're trying to get to, or pretend to be one or the other, right? And so that works really well. From the automation side, I mean, it's mostly just stuff we already know about, like randomization of attack patterns, of code samples, use of loaders. All of our examples on our website, honestly, things we saw bypass is because the hackers were using loaders before they bring down their Death Star, and so loaders was a good way for them to, kind of mutate a little bit of code very quickly on a per deployment basis. Use of encryption randomizes things, right? So use of encryption is great. So all of that together helps create a good automation sequence for attackers. Plus, bandwidth is so cheap now. I see a lot of like smash and grab type of attacks where they'll go in there with the predetermined. I always laugh whenever I watched Star Trek when I was a kid, and they'd be like execute pattern like Delta whatever, and you see like the ship fly by, and you're like, I don't. What is attack pattern Delta? Like I didn't see anything happen. But for the hackers, right, it's like okay, target all the passwords, they target all the API keys, just have this predetermined list of things to do. Smash and grab and then leave, right?
Yeah.
and like cruise missile, right? And that's what I see the attacker automation really doing well is those post-exploitation scripts, basically, to go and grab stuff. On the defender side, we had to use genetic AI, but essentially, against the smash and grab, it's like the rebellion versus the Star Wars, versus the Empire thing. Like if the rebellion comes in with 25 TIE fighters and a Nebulon B frigate, busts something up and leaves, it doesn't matter if eventually like the intelligence analysts figure it out and 9 starship destroyers like end up like showing up an hour later. The damage is done. Who cares? Like at that point, now you're in cleanup mode. And so defense automation has to be like a just-in-time defense, which if you're a computer scientist, just-in-time has like a lot of meaning. If you're not, that it's just kind of a phrase,
Because you mentioned about the defenders. Do the defenders need AI-driven automation that mirrors the AI attackers are using, or is this less about AI versus AI and more about discipline or operational execution?
No, it's a great question. I see a lot of the startups using AI. Now there's like agentic AI, then there's like cybersecurity SOC AI, right?
I see.
And it's definitely a world where SOCs need there's just too much data, right? And there's always more, right? And AI can be really good at churning through that, trying to find some kind of thing for people to look at. I get that. When there's obvious attacks being missed and you hope the customer doesn't see, right? I get that world, right? But like by the time even the telemetry gets there and lets the data churn through it and everything, the time's already gone,
I see.
and so it has to be an agentic AI on-prem, on endpoint kind of solution to be able to make that decision, because you figure how much you can do in math, like how much time does it take for an info stealer to carve up all of your passwords and API keys. It's like milliseconds, right? And then ship that out. You don't have 3 hours for the SOC AI to kind of come back and someone called the boss and tells the boss, and the boss is like, what do I do now? So that's kind of what I see. Agentic AI, good. SOC AI, necessary, but it's CSI. It's a forensic thing now.
Yeah, but do you think the AI could be like something like blue team, red team, and all these teams that could do?
Yes, I think it's a lot of game of let's see, to take AI out of the equation. It reminds me a lot of password hash cracking. Remember when like rainbow tables came out and everyone was like, oh, I can crack that hash and whatever, like, LM or whatever, right? And then like someone came by with like rainbow tables and they were like, we're going to pre-compute and move all of that computation away, and it's a little bit like that in that these pre-computed kind of like artificial intelligence kind of mechanisms, it's a game of preparation, almost like a Cold War, and I think the hardware is not going to allow you to have like true AI on the endpoint.
Not yet.
Not yet. It's going to be a while. I mean,
exactly.
I got all excited about Microsoft Recall, right? And then I realized the hardware can't support even a fraction of it, right? So I think what's going to happen is that it's a game of pre-computation and pre-awareness of different paths. Even our genetic AI is essentially pre-computed models.
I agree.
That go into the endpoint, because God forbid the CEO has a Surface tablet and you're trying to run like some big LLM on it. It wouldn't work.
I have a question about the defensive automation, and here, as we know, often gets criticized for creating noisy or unintended consequences. What are the guardrails should an organization have in place to ensure automation that helps rather than hurts?
That's a really great question. We get asked a lot about, because we have a lot of automation, so people, and that we see 200 milliseconds and everything, and people are like, what happens when you get it wrong? Because that's happened in the past to all of us, right? It's like a trial by fire for every developer to break something and get fired. So like and so for us, it was a matter of if we're going to be automated, then we need all possible information to be able to make a decision. And people are like, well, where's the smoking gun? And it
Okay.
reminds me of I saw a presentation by a guy James Greer, I think, not the Tom Clancy guy, but but he I think works at In-Q-Tel or used to. I mean, he has really old now, but he was always like for his banking stuff, he ended up with these like 1,000 variable kind of equations to model risk for the financial institutions, even though or cyber or anything, but there was no one variable that was like, aha, that's it. And that's kind of the world that all of us came from, right? We're like, oh, a hash match. There's a smoking gun, aha. With our model and with any model that is coming, it has to be this very kind of difficult to understand thing to say, well, there's no serial killer, no one left some weird thing behind, but these 900 different points of evidence themselves are not very meaningful, but together they give us a very compelling answer. And so a lot of our development has been around how to give that very compelling answer without being wrong, and without letting too many things go through.
Also, we are seeing increased investment in AI, assisted defensive research, and I have seen a lot of big companies that they are doing that. I mean, let's say, I don't know, companies like for the CTI or companies that they are doing for anti-malware and so on. How important are these developments to the future of cyber defense?
Oh, great question. Well, I mean, it's if you're following the world of MDR, right, when you really just get all the data you can, get all the data all the time, you have a secondary problem that I think, a lot of the folks, Aaron, I know you're near NSA, right, near DC and all of that, right? So like,
oh yeah, we're close.
That's the problem that every law enforcement agency has had forever, right? Recently is like, okay, now I have more data than I never knew existed. I can't count the zeros, what do I do with it? And so I think AI is a phenomenal tool. It's a necessary tool for that, from like a forensic capability and understanding. It's not going to be the cop walking the beat, but it's definitely going to be, if anyone's been to London, it's definitely going to be able to interpret all the London video camera feeds, to be like, well, here's where the hacker went to lunch yesterday kind of thing, and so I think it's vital and very important to have both. I don't think it's going to be the cop walking the beat until we have another 6 generations of hardware or something, but real generations, not just Intel marketing, like real improvements in CPU, but I think I like the investments. I like that we're doing it. It's a hard problem, and I really like the ability to have eventually the ability to have an MDR give you like a complex storyline up until the point at which the cop walking the beat, the agentic AI had to take action with limited information.
Do you think AI will help us in the next years, or do you think the AI is so mature as other people are saying? For example, it got maturity in like 5 or 7 years.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I can guess just like you. I don't know. I don't see it now. But honestly, we have a Fortress AI product that's also out, and we tried partnering with a few companies. We did a tech assessment to be like, okay, how good are they at filtering this AI out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then or filtering out bad content. And we realized for a couple of different reasons we wouldn't partner yet, because we were like, they're not quite there, and we're essentially being like a kernel level stateless engine, based on ChatGPT program behavior, right? And they were looking at the content, trying to filter it out, right? And what happened was really interesting is these companies kept getting bought, like acquired, as we were passing on them to partner with. We were like, they're not quite mature enough yet to to really partner with, because now we're just inheriting a new problem, how good is the AI? And but then they kept getting bought, and I was like, well, I guess we're in a gold rush right now, and that what I hope doesn't happen. I'm really hoping that these companies getting acquired who have some really cool core foundational technology for a very hard problem, right? Like the early days of web application gateways or IPS, right? I'm hoping that them getting acquired doesn't take the fire out of their belly, to get to where it needs to be. That's what I worry about. They're kind of like, okay, I made my first 50 million, I'm out. You know, like, and you're
Well,
like,
of course.
but you got to change the way humanity works. Come on, guys.
You got to know their
like,
mindset. You know,
you know?
they're thinking of the Bahamas and the beach
I
house on the
know,
water.
yeah, like limit to like one Mai Tai a day, maybe. You know, like, and then get back to work. You know, so.
Where do you see the biggest opportunity for defenders to move from reactive security to proactive automation-driven resilience?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm a little bit biased, of course, because I made a tool, right, that does that. I couldn't find anything out there that even closely, resembled what we needed. So I made a piece of software that did that. I can tell you that it's only possible with like a ton of innovation in the kernel driver. Possible with layer upon layer of failure and opportunity.
Yeah.
Every time I see someone with a pitch that kind of looks like a marketing admirer, I'm actually hopeful because like we're not perfect, right? And so I'm kind of like, good, someone else can maybe find something we didn't,
For sure.
like, and that's what I hope for. But all of these lightweight EDR collectors, I worry that that's like too easy of an answer for what's needed nowadays, we already have a bunch of that, right? Like open EDR, open source even has really great capabilities.
Oh yeah.
now.
Yeah, true. And I see a lot of work between AI and open source lately.
Yeah,
I think I saw 2 tools, open source, that were mentioned on different websites, like HelpNet, for example, HelpNet Security, if you have heard.
Yeah.
And over there, I see a lot of work where open source advance so much. And another thing, Red Hat, I think, I was to an event in Romania last year where they were mentioning will support most of the open source projects and companies with AI, which is not bad.
That is good. Yeah. And honestly, it's not competitive to me, right? Because I'm looking at the MDR, drowning in data problem as like distinct from me, right?
Yeah.
Cop walking the beat, right? If all of them start having like, open source agentic AI, I'm keeping an eye on that. That's where I'm thinking that, the endpoint edge computing side, I think that's where I'm keeping an eye on. The MDR problem, I'm like, great, because nothing is worse than someone saying, can you give me the whole picture of what happened in the life cycle of this hacker, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can give you like what happened on this system. I can't tell you that like they compromised the COO 6 months ago, and that they've been, kind of not doing anything since then, and so for me, I'm looking forward to it, and anything to give a better story on the life cycle of the hacker, can be very valuable for us.
Okay, before I will pass the floor to Aaron regarding Cyber Crucible and practical execution. There are some questions. I don't know if Dennis wants to take them as well.
Let's see. I only got through like one, I think, earlier. Then LinkedIn user, the state.
Because it's anonymous. This is why.
Yeah, it's funny. Whatever. I used to do a ton of webinars back when we did key capture. Back when it was like an actual key capture used to work as a ransomware kind of defense mechanism to just automatically decrypt. But all my webinars were all anonymous. Like I had like Darth Vader at Proton.mail and all that kind of stuff. After a while, it was like only the diehards who I had no idea who they were. Like there were so many Han Solos and and like Air Bears and stuff. And I was like, I can't tell these are hackers or if these are like competitors. I was like, I can't tell a difference. Anyway.
But what I've got to admit, the questions we've got on here have always been respectful and professional.
Yeah, exactly.
With LinkedIn, I had we've been pretty lucky with that.
That's good. Yeah, on my webinar, it was a lot of. Then I'll get back to the questions. It was a lot of like, you could tell the hacker versus the competitor, because the competitor would be like, do you have like an open source, like a Word document you could pass over, that has this information? and then the malware developers who would get on, it was like, so on line 11 on this function, I have IDA Pro up. Can you tell me what you've done here? And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like massive respect for the reverse engineers, but I can't answer that, So, but anyway, Yeah, so I do think that state-sponsored attackers, of course, they're going to develop LLMs, right? The good news is, though, they haven't really had to. I mean, realistically, like, to do a randomization kind of activity for mutation, that technology has like been around forever. I
Yeah.
think the AI is just helping to make it so that people who aren't as steep in the tradecraft are able to access it.
Yes.
Availability has gone up,
Yeah.
and I think that's the difference, is that with Anthropic, we're essentially demonstrating that it was good enough for the state-sponsored people to tweak once in a while and get the job done. So they could hand it off to the, I don't know, it's China, right? So they could hand it off to like the political appointee's son who somehow got a job, like is fairly competent, and just let him click once in a while, and there you go,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so of course we'd never do that in the United States, right? But like so the CEO's son always, it was meritorious, his promotion, right? But like yeah, but anyway, so I think they have, I don't know if they really need to, but I don't know how we could tell either, especially if it's on the especially if it is on the impersonating people side of things, right? Which allegedly a lot of countries have a lot of investments in on the human side of things,
Oh yeah, the deep fakes.
Yeah. Let's see. Are there more questions that I missed?
There was another question from Ahmed. Can you suggest some proper algorithms in machine learning that work best with defense automation?
Oh wow! I actually had I had a colleague who showed me some of the analysis they did for basically for a couple EDR vendors that had very similar sales pitches to us, right? Which is easy to do in cyber, because unlike medicine, we all kind of just like, spit out acronyms and no one dies, right? So like, so the and the open source tools actually seem to like the open source AI tools and LLMs and pre-computed stuff and stuff like that. It was interesting. He gave me like a snapshot picture into it, right? Where they were taking the open source security telemetry data points, whether that be like hashes or mutexes and programs or whatever, those projects, remapping them, translating them into being ready for the open source AI security kind of tools, or more generalized AI tools, and then putting them into their commercial product, right?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's like going to be a mess with MIT licenses versus not and all that kind of stuff. Right? That wasn't really my problem. But so it seems like even underneath the hood, the commercial folks are adapting the variety of open source kind of like quasi pre-computed edge computing AI things into their products. And it's literally like I recognized the projects in the code, and I was like, okay, so that means that a knowledgeable practitioner could build a private EDR based on what I'm seeing here, right? That is able to keep up with the evolution of the of that cybersecurity AI space, just using the plethora of data out there. Now I saw he did a scan, and it did make Virus Total and his competitors kind of like all freaked out, because they had all these like mutexes and strings, all this garbage in there, right, from being a security tool. But I found it fascinating that unlike us, you have to like constantly figure out, like we found like exploits in Boost, so we had to like fix those and put parts of Boost into our kernel driver, right? But on the EDR MDR side, it seems like you could really build something privately as like an academic project or internally in a company, just like maybe even contribute like Red Hat back to the GitHub and GitLab projects,
Yeah, we know very well what's happening over there.
Right. Yeah. So any other, let's see, team conversation.
What I could do, Dennis, we could definitely go into the Cyber Crucible.
Sure.
So Cyber Crucible focuses on operationalizing automation, right? So can you kind of explain to us, how do you help organizations balance human oversight with the need to operate at machine speed?
Absolutely. We tried to get down to the fastest possible like alert notification to say, hey guys, there's an attack underway, get into this, right? And we quickly realized that this was back in like 2020, 2021, we
Okay.
realized that the untapped automation capability of the attackers, they essentially hadn't bothered to invest in the automation, but we realized it's a bit like EMP. We realized that no matter what we do to get the human involved, the automation will quickly become more powerful on the hacker side than our ability to get, and we saw, like one of the malware developers on the bad guy side, called us and they were doing optimizations to get around us, or trying to at least. And I realized we're at speeds that the nerves and the eye can't respond to now, and I was and we add in latency for network and everything. So I actually, I realized okay, we have to go back to the 90s, honestly, where, you'd install your Symantec EDR or McAfee or whatever, and then you kind of went back to, installing Adobe Acrobat Reader on people's machines or whatever. That's like a deep 4chan cut if anyone in the LinkedIn remembers that story. But and so I was like, we need to get back to that where it all just happens in the machine, right? And then we say, hey, folks, here's what we did. And it's interesting watching the psychology of that with really busy technology people, because I was always they were kind of treating it like any other chore or vendor. I was on the list next to the spam vendor and everything else, right? And I watched the fire suppression system guy come in, and he was like, hey, it's time to renew your fire suppression and certify it and everything. And it was the exact same emotional reaction as my call, which was just like a checkup to see what was going on. Okay, good. Everything's working. Great. Okay, go. I got to get back to this next problem I have, and operationally, I think there's enough things on every IT and security professional's plate, let alone the confusion from the business unit, that we have to get to a more automated, back to an more automated solution, and not just have 500 knobs to turn, from whatever vendor, and as you're trying to keep up, right, which no one can keep up, quite honestly. So that's kind of what I see, is that I'm giving them back time and budget to apply elsewhere, to the what is it there's the what have you done for me lately kind of music from the maybe from a previous generation, and it's kind of well, we've taken care of all these problems for you. Now you can deal with all these other problems. I always joke, 99 problems and we're not one of them. I was throwing in pop culture references, which make a lot of sense and make people happy, or not if they're not into that. Culturally, if they're not into that pop music, then they don't get the reference at all. So.
Can you share some examples where defense automation done correctly materially changed outcomes for a security team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest examples we've seen that's going to be difficult to replicate. We maybe, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, we started seeing all of these Chrome browsers fire up in our telemetry. And we were like, what the heck is this? Oh no. And of course I'm a very technical CEO, right? So immediately went to the product folks and said, hey, do we have a bug? And internally, right? Because we kept seeing all these Chrome browsers, and then we did a little more digging, and they were Chrome browsers that had in some way stood up it's called a utility browser. It's not in the face of the browsing session. It's behind the scenes, and the sandbox was turned off, right? And it was trying to survey all of the cookies and passwords on the system and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And we realized that what we were seeing was a wave of exploits, where it was a first access, which would have resulted in mass, identity compromises for organizations, right? And because it was happening automatically, and it took us a little bit to notice because we're not a SOC, right? We saw that in the meantime, in the past week, there was already hundreds of examples where we had suspended that Chrome browser before it could access any data on their smash and grab. So we realized that we've already had hundreds of successes. The end user had no idea. They didn't, the employees had no idea. The organizations, the MSPs were kind of just getting caught up to be hey, what's going on here, right? And fast forward, at our peak, we were seeing 5,000 attempts against some organizations. Others, zero. So it was, it was weird how there was targeting going on. And we actually had a bank where the intranet site that they were going to, that was like hosted somewhere else, was having the same problem, right? And they were able to verify, like, okay, there's no exploit on the website, like, but they're getting an exploit on the endpoint, so at the employee, basically.
Hmm.
So it must be inserted at the telecom level in that instance, right? Which, the Salt Typhoon stuff was just kind of fortunately timed in that reporting about the Chinese in our GSM and backbone internet, right? So we were like, okay, basically, we have stopped thousands of successful exploits. No one knew. The number one question was, what do I do about it? And I'm like, just keep patching Chrome. They're going to run out of 0 days eventually, hopefully, and that was it, right? So the big example of like what you do was that the customer did nothing, had to do nothing, just kept on going about their day. And and just they were busy with HR issues and everything else. And that's honestly, as risk managers, you don't want your risk management to interfere or impede with revenue operations, right? And that's exactly what we did. We enabled the risk management to occur without anyone even knowing for quite a while. And we had to point it out to customers for a while, to say, hey, we're stopping this. No one in the business unit knew or anything.
That's fantastic. I'm not sure Alex agrees with you on the risk management side with that.
I'm from the banking side.
Alex is like more than happy to impede.
Yeah, I'm on the banking side. I've been CISO in the past, and then risk manager and auditor. So yeah,
Right.
In terms of this, I don't know what to say. I mean, it depends how you see the things. Why I'm saying that, because each environment is different. From a company to another company. That's one of the things. And the second thing, you apply differently the part of the security, the principle of security, let's say that. You have to understand how big is that company, how mature is that company, and so on.
That makes perfect sense. And, some of the companies, seeing the reactions of people, some follow some of that public advice to, not tell their employees not to put passwords into the browser. Others implemented LastPass as an enterprise-wide tool, or their competitors. One or two actually use the open source version, which is kind of cool to see. And then I was like, well, that's great, but like the session tokens are still in there, and they're still getting access to the OAuth tokens that come after, right?
Yeah.
And you have to explain OAuth token, and either they're really well versed in it or they're not at all, right? There's no in between with that, And I also saw some folks who were like, well, I'm going to try to switch all my users over to a different browser, not a Chromium-based browser, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, go for it. I said, and then they'd be like, which one do you recommend? And I was like, I have no idea what CVEs or exploits are out there right now.
Yeah.
Flying around for Firefox or Brave or Opera. I was like, I have no idea. I'm sorry, I can't go on the record. Kind of like being your trusted advisor when I'm nothing but, like I'm not that advisor for how many Firefox exploits are out there,
So then it's kind of beyond technology. What organizational or kind of cultural challenges do you see security leaders struggling with when adopting automation?
It's a great question. So I think by now we've all been burned at some point in our career. Everyone who's gone to like a leadership position or a buying position, they've all been burned by automation in the past, right?
Yeah.
And there's no like karma police in cybersecurity, not really, to say, well, that salesman at that vendor lied, right? And because everyone has a automation fully AI from the ground up tool that really isn't automated and is really three raccoons in a trench coat behind the scenes, maybe in Pakistan, and so organization, there is fear, right? And there's rightfully so, right? So we have to do a proof of concept every single time, and that's perfectly fine with us, to make sure that they know that the automation is there. But also, I think that employee use of AI tools, whether managed or not, is causing a level of automation to be used by the employees without really, it's like proverbially like the new undergraduate student who's like using AI, like LLM, like, Python libraries, and has absolutely no idea how AI works, and is standing on the shoulder of PhDs going back a mile,
Of
like,
course.
and yeah, and they're
Yeah.
like, look at this, I'm just like them, and I'm like, ooh, okay, you're gonna regret that when you're 40, like,
Well,
but
it's true. My daughter's in college, and they warn them, do your own research.
yeah, and the best we can do is cursory at this point, right? We're
Yeah.
not gonna learn all the way back, but yeah, and so the level of automation that we're seeing is that honestly is very scary to me. That a properly leveraged AI tool can probably filter through that smash and grab what to exfil data
Yeah.
faster than any person or non-AI tool can ever do. Right. That to me is what's a little bit scary. Is that we know it's coming. Right. That data carving exercise might already being used insider threats or whatever. But that's what I see is scary. In terms of automation and getting companies to, we developed the capability to kind of let them control and manage which programs do what where. I think that's the first start. We have really fancy capabilities around like compliance and around, okay, what happens when the chat gpt.exe DLL gets hacked, gets implanted or poisoned or something, right? People just aren't there yet. They're still back at like privacy. You can't have compliance or security concerns without first just getting control over what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so people are still just there at the very beginning, like, how can I control Copilot, who I've turned off 17 times this month and just keeps on turning back on, right? How can I gauge that? And that's where we see people are at.
Before I start with another question, we have an interesting question from an anonymous LinkedIn user. What is your take on AI security defense automation with agentic capabilities for self-healing to stop threat actors?
Really interesting question. So I think self-healing for us or for agentic AI really means that the hackers tried to break you and you were able to fix what was broken and come back. That's what we've seen, where, given enough access, a hacker has the privileges and the authority to break you. And at that point, it's a little bit like where you're both equal. I don't know. It's like all those stupid Japanese, I shouldn't say stupid, all those Japanese shows, my cartoons, my son watches, where it's like lots of screaming and then they do a punch and they go flying a mile in the air and stuff.
Oh, you're talking about the anime?
Yeah, and then
I just love it.
Okay, so they all have
Absolutely love
like world-destroying punches,
Oh yeah.
and they all just seem to fight the whole time. The sun explodes. I don't know. They scream a lot,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the subtitles, and then it goes to the next episode somehow, right? And that's kind of what happens at some point with the hackers, right? Where Cyber Crucible and the kernel can eventually have problems where we have to self-heal. Without going into too much detail and taking over the getting off topic, right? And so there has to be the self-healing. We're seeing where honestly the profit incentives at the companies, I don't get the sense that many CROs are saying, hey, you got to make sure this product is self-healing from a hacker, like a privileged hacker.
No, I don't think so.
More. Yeah, so we actually see on the EDR killer side where the EDR killers have to be careful because these EDRs are so fragile that if you do exploits, it'll like take down the whole system, right?
Yeah, true.
So you have to be careful.
It's like a blackout, in fact.
Yeah, and because
Well, didn't that just happen with somebody?
I'm sorry, Aaron, I talked earlier.
Yeah,
sorry.
it was lately.
Didn't that just happen with somebody? I'm not going to bring up names.
The blackout, yeah, indeed. It was.
Yes, that did happen. Yes, and even one test would have found that. Yeah. So we always look at it as we see them too, right? And we've had to do some similar stuff to make sure we don't accidentally like hurt the EDR and make it kind of crumble, And so agentic AI self-healing. I don't know if that's what they meant though in their question, because it's a world that like certainly the EDR vendors don't talk about because they don't have any profit incentive to, but we've had to do a lot of like kernel level fix ourselves because we just might be cut off from the internet and have no idea what's going on with DLL poisoning and everything else.
If a CISO watching today could only focus on automating one thing in the next 90 days to prepare for AI-driven threats, what should it be?
Well, first I'm going to be cheesy and say Cyber Crucible. I mean, that's the only tool I've seen out there, right? If they are not willing to purchase a preventative, proactive solution like Cyber Crucible, then they just have to follow the advice of the EDR vendors who know they can't stop it. And so it reminds me of like the sales pitch when I bought a car off like a lot outside a college campus, where like it was all about like the warranty, and then you found out the warranty didn't actually cover anything, but they're always like, they switch, you're buying your Civic and they'd be like, well, that's going to break down in the next 1,000 miles and you have to prepare for it. Here's my tow truck stipend. Here's, and I was like, man, I guess I'm buying a broken car,
Yeah.
and
You're like, what am I buying here? If I need a warranty after 1,000 miles, what am I buying?
And it's like, this pitch is much different than the pitch I got when I was first on the lot, but I guess the point is, they have this like fatalistic kind of sales pitch, right? Where they're like, well, you're going to get bypassed, so you should buy our Binford's, stipend for, $50,000 of warranty, or all the different things, right? And if you're not going to buy something that is preventative, and for that, just be prepared for the burn. I mean, that's
I agree. I agree on that. Going to another topic, interesting one, future outlook, where I will pass here the first question to Aaron.
Yeah, I know we're getting near the close, 12:52. So, Dennis, say we're looking at 12 to 24 months ahead. What do you see the balance between attack automation and defense automation evolving? How do you see that evolving in the future?
That's a great question. So on the attack automation side, I am seeing in the second half of last year, I saw a major shift. And what I'm seeing is that they are the bad guys. I should say bad girls, but that sounds like almost like that's I like to stay away from that, But like, so the bad people. There you go.
I think that was a movie.
Oh, great. Okay, you're right. It was. Yeah. So I'll have some.
Or was it Bad Moms? I'm sorry.
I'll have someone from calling me to say, I owe them a royalty or something, But like, but yeah. So the criminals, right? Are learning to automate and make resilient more and more of the highly advanced but highly powerful, we'll call them touchy capabilities, where you couldn't really do it at scale without a whole bunch of like logistical backend, right? And I'm seeing more and more on the attacker automation side where, they're getting these more and more advanced capabilities that are coming to bear, that we've even had to do some upgrades for. We're always evolving, but we were like, ooh, we didn't think that'd be coming around like this, against like small manufacturers and stuff, right? And so we've had to do upgrades to account for these highly advanced, formerly very targeted attacks that are now more accessible, in a sustained way, which, is fascinating, use case for automation, but it's horrifying, On the defender side, I'm almost seeing I'm seeing a calling of the herd, I guess is the best way to put it. Actually, I've been using that phrase in the last week a lot internally, where I'm seeing where a whole bunch of these sensors out there that can't see what's attacking them, are having like memory usage, basically the user experience affected in a very negative way. And
do you think they are not trained very well in order to identify or to discover?
It's that there's not good enough data available to them, And what I'm seeing is that they are being attacked in a way that causes the customer to say, you know what, screw it, uninstall it. I can't have my business go down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened to a couple vendors so far we've seen. We've had to upgrade a little bit to avoid it, where they have these kernel level exploits now that are being used against relatively uninteresting targets, quite honestly, but at scale. And it's causing the defensive tools to put a bad taste in the customer's mouths, because they're being attacked by the hackers, and they don't have the sensors. They're user land. They're not kernel land. So they have no way of even seeing it, the attacks, let alone responding to it. And I think I think the tradecraft has gotten powerful enough now for enough, even minorly skilled hackers, marginally skilled, that the EDRs are just outclassed. I mean, realistically, and that they're just not technologically equipped as a platform. After all the advice to stay out of the kernel and everything else, and to make an EDR, they're just caught unaware. They invested in the best like carriage wheels possible to sell for the horse and buggies, and then here comes this Model T, jerk flying by, and they're completely caught unaware,
And I think you're seeing them purchase AI companies that try to fix that. But I've seen that before with companies I've worked for, where they have one solution meant to deal with one specific thing, and it's great with dealing with that. But then they try to hammer it in to be a totally separate product, and it's like taking a square peg in a round hole and trying to slam it in as hard as you can. I get what they're trying to do. I totally understand it, but the core of the product, the core programming, is not meant for that.
Right,
and that's always an issue.
Yeah, there's two EDR vendors that I see that the best non-tech description I can give is, whenever you find you're like digging in the forest or whatever, and you find like a whole bunch of like gravel and pebbles that have somehow cemented themselves together, and it's not a coherent piece of concrete, it's like just a clump of rock, and that's what it reminds me of, this like all held together by clay or something, all these different like aquarium pebbles, and I see that as some of these companies, right? And then sometimes I watch, and the different parts of the products don't even know each other exist because of the acquisition, and they just haven't kind of put it together,
Yeah. Sorry, I had to take my headphones off real quick, Alex.
Yeah, no worries.
It just kept on cutting off and on, and I was like, okay, this is driving me absolutely nuts. I can't take this anymore. So sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
I know, Alex, you have one more question. We are almost finished. We got 3 minutes left.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Dennis, do you want to take the last question, or?
No, I was going to say, Alex, with you. Do you have one more question, or we could kind of wrap it up from here?
No, we can wrap up.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, Dennis, number one, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was fantastic. You're a wealth of incredible information. But second, definitely tell me about your company, how people get a hold of you, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So my company is Cyber Crucible. We have a genetic AI powered agentic AI agent for prevention, against data and identity attacks. We've branched that out to AI, limiting AI tools, which actually is in some ways easier, in some ways harder than keeping out malware. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email. LinkedIn's probably the quickest way. I think that's how Aaron and I mostly talk, but it's the quickest way to get a hold of me. If it's something sensitive, then find me. Give you my signal number. We can talk over there. No problem at all. And we're huge fans on. Honestly, in a world where privacy is always sought after and seldom found, we have strict rules in our company about using co-location facilities, never sharing data, never asking questions that might make you uncomfortable in answering. That seems to be the first lesson we learned. Don't ask them if they've had a ransomware incident.
Yeah.
They don't really want to tell you.
They don't want to bring that up. Yeah.
But you can find me on LinkedIn, and I try to keep up on thought leadership posts, and would love to have a chat.
Awesome.
Also, before closing here, I would like to thanks to all the participants that have joined to our live webinar. And also, I would like to inform that we'll have an interesting live webinar on the 4th of February. So please please join our website and also on the LinkedIn group. Jeffrey Brown from Microsoft CISO will join this event.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much. Dennis, of course, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. And I'll see you at our next event.
Appreciate your time, guys. Thank you.
All right. Dennis.